I'm always very excited when I get to chat to anyone about AI and strategy. And today we've got Pip with us, who has created an AI product. I think I can call it a product to
Yeah,
help strategists out. So, Pip, would love you to introduce what you've got for strategists and a bit about your background.
yeah, too easy. So I guess the easiest way is to start with who we are. So Amy's my wife, we started this business about a year and a half ago. But our background was being in agencies for the past 15 odd years. So we started in media agencies in Sydney. We ended up in creative shops in San Francisco. I was there for about 6 or 7 years. Amy ended up going into internal teams at Twitter and Shopify. I ended up doing a head of brand role at a crypto startup. We had a kid, we moved back home, and we ended up in Noosa to get help from Amy's parents because kids are tough work. And we ended up both getting laid off at the exact same time. So I like to say we both got whacked at the same time. So I got whacked and then Amy got whacked. And it was the first time in our lives, actually probably similar to you, Julian, where we made a decision on where we want to live, not where we want to work. And we'd ended up in Noosa. Like Noosa is like such a beautiful spot, particularly to raise kids. And we didn't want to move back to a big city. So we ended up starting a business, which was at the time called Trilingual. It was a consultancy business that we would just do any type of work from creative strategy, media strategy, go-to-market planning, primarily for clients and agencies in the States. But in that process, I discovered that although I always thought my dream job was to be a stay-at-home dad, I found it really tough. Like being a stay-at-home dad is super hard. And I found it almost kind of depressing to a degree. So I had to lock myself in a room and teach myself something new. And I became a deadbeat dad instead of a stay-at-home dad, I like to say. So anyway, like long story short, I ended up teaching myself how to code. I was playing around with AI for a while, the last year and a bit, and I built the original versions of what's eventually became. So it was these shitty little tools that allow us to accelerate our own day-to-day work. So anyway, we've been playing with these things. They were clunky, hard to use. We ended up going down to Sydney to speak at an AI conference. We talked about it, did a little demo there. And at the end of that, we had about 3 agencies come up to us saying, hey, can we pay you for these tools? And I'm like, what are you talking about? These things suck. They're in Google Colab. They're shitty. I have to load the libraries every time I'm coding these things. But it was enough of a spark that it got us thinking, oh shit, maybe there's a different business there. So on the flight back to Noosa, we decided to stop doing consulting work, take all our severance pay and our life savings and hire a dev team to build this thing up properly. And it's kind of gone wild since then. So we had started with 10 agencies on board in Australia, a mix of media and creative shops. We ended up showing an ex-colleague, Zoe, a demo maybe 3 or 4 months ago in November, and then everything kind of blew up. So we had about 150 agencies reach out from around the world. We had clients reach out to us, saying if they can see the tool. And we've basically just been doing demos since from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. for the last 3 or 4 months. We've got about 30 plus agencies on board now. So it's like, yeah, it's been a pretty wild journey. But it's been super fun. It's like really humbling experience as well at the same time.
I can imagine doing demos 24/7 is probably a lot of work. Where do you think the initial 30 agencies you've had on board, where's been some of their wins that they've had?
Yeah, we're just about to finish the study now, basically, where we've taken one of the agencies that we've been working with. Half of they've got about 10 seats. Half of them used our platform in a live brief. The others didn't. We recorded timesheets, looked at the quality of output of work, and we should have those answers in the next week or so. But the tool does a couple of different things. That'll be super interesting. We don't know which way it's going to go, by the way. But the tools, it like goes through like a traditional agency process. Like it's an AI tool that was built by creative people that learn how to code, not coders that are trying to learn about creativity. So there's a big difference there. So it does a few things. The one, it generates insights really quickly, does outlines a brand strategy, does creative briefs through to ideation, concepts, TV scripts, all the way through to concept art. So we've got a mix of strategists, love it, because it allows them to play around with strategies, but also see where their strategies might lead. Like I've always been of the opinion is that it doesn't matter what I think about my strategy. So my background was always strategy, and I always been of the opinion, it doesn't matter what I think about my strategy. If it doesn't inspire a good idea, it's a shit strategy. So now, like, the reason why I originally loved these is that I can do a strategy. Now I can see where it goes. And I can get a creative thought that's stuck in my head out on paper, which is like super interesting. That's why I think that's why I originally fell in love with Midjourney. But yeah, we've got something that's just a little bit different. It's built for an agency process. So everyone uses it differently, to be honest.
When I was using ChatGPT, what I realized, I logged a lot of hours in it. I think it's really good at the very start of the process, and then it's really good at the end, but the middle, I think, is where it lets itself down. I just don't think you can validate a strategy or an insight without actually talking to people. And so how are you getting, one, is that a problem for you? And then two, how are you getting over that?
Yeah. So there's probably two parts to this. One is that I think ChatGPT or language models as a whole, I think is an incredible technology, but I think the product is actually really fucking horrible. I think it's a really poor user experience. And the reason for that is for two reasons. One is that when you use ChatGPT, you need to learn how to prompt. No one teaches you. You also then have to wade through all of the information they get you. You then need to teach it as you're on the fly. And then even if you can get a good result out of it, to then try and replicate that, you start at zero every single time. So I think the technology is awesome. The application's not great. So that's kind of my point of view on that in terms of using it for the creative process, because it's not built for that yet. In terms of how we get around the validation of the insights, and I guess that middle part, which gets a little bit harder and murkier, is a couple of things. One is that we've taught these things like what good insights are and what a good idea is and the rest of it. But we also play with temperature, and I don't know if you know what temperature is, but the way I explain it is it's like how many beers you want to give your AI buddy. Like it's like if you give your AI buddy 0 beer, he'll answer very, very straight. If you give him 6 beers, he'll go a little bit wild, yeah. And we actually actively encourage a little bit of more the creative wildness. We give him 6 or 7 beers. Now, it's hard to validate the insights when you do it that way, but it leads to better creative ideas, in my opinion, anyway. So the way that I think about this when we're looking at insights that come out of the tool is that if I see a truth in it in myself that I feel, then it's likely that other people will feel that as well. And then you go back and post-rationalize it. So you use it as a way to signpost where you're going, not necessarily to find the actual answer. That's why we call this business springboards. It's about jump-off points for creativity and inspiration versus the actual answer. So that's kind of the way we do it. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
So do you have any examples of this?
Yeah, we've got, I post an idea every single week now about a tool that's come directly out of the platform. So I've literally just started doing that. So I publish them on LinkedIn. I do quite a bit on there now. I've also got a deck of like 40 different examples, which are I just capture those during a demo, go, oh, that's an interesting idea. I'll save that, and then I'll push it out into the world. But I can show you a couple of the 3 that I've just pinned literally on my post if you want to do that.
Yeah, let me
share screen.
There we go.
Let me see.
Go ahead.
All right, so do you want to share screen? Work? All right, cool. All right, I'm just going to go to my LinkedIn here. I won't give you okay, this is a few of the ideas that I've just started posting. Okay, so the idea, the copy, the art, the insight that was behind all of this work came directly from the tool that we built. This one's obviously for Lego. It's just, this is not a brick, it's a cornerstone of the universe you create. So that was the first one, little print concept. I will take you through a couple of others here, which then have an insight as a jump off point and different mediums. So I love this example as a piece of work. I don't know if you can you see that? Sorry, Julian.
Yeah, I can see it.
let me, if I open it in a new tab, it might be full. That's better. There we go. Okay, so again, this concept straight out of the tool. The insight here was for Amnesty International, and it was that justice's voice can often be a whisper, yet demands to be heard. So that was the insight that came from the tool. The idea, the concept that we crafted off the back of that was hear the hushed. And then we took that through to a YouTube 6-second skippable ad. And this is like one of the creepiest versions of an ad I've seen come out of the tool. But basically, it's a black screen, 6-second skippable ad. And you've got people whispering, saying, help us, help us, help us. And they slowly grow bigger. And the skip button is being replaced into a mute their voices. So we're changing that behavior. Whereas instead of getting to like skip, I don't want to hear people asking for help because it creeps me out. You change it to mute their voices. It makes it much, much harder to do that. And then at the end, if they watch the full ad, then you get the tagline, hear the hushed, act to amplify, ask for a donation. Yeah. So again, that concept was straight from the tool. And I'll show you one more because I just published this as well.
Was it all the way through, as in like the insight, the idea, and it's saying that about YouTube skippable, or did you then come up with some of the idea and then the execution here?
So this one was pretty much word for word, straight from the tool. And I can show you this in a minute. This is what the tool looks like. We have a brand strategy tool, an insight tool, creative brief, big brands, comms framework, all the way through to executions. I'll show you that afterwards, but that was word for word. The best way to use it though, I'll give you one more example. This is what we usually do in a deck. If I go full screen, can you see that still? It's screen sharing or not? Okay, so this is another example. This is more of a screen grab of the actual platform. This example is for Patagonia. Okay, this is what came out directly from the tool without any editing, was this idea here. Now, don't bother trying to read it. I'll just explain it to you. But the concept for Patagonia was this idea of nature's dressing room, a stunning panoramic image, unspoiled wilderness. In the middle of this beautiful wilderness, you've got a mirror. And on top of that mirror is a Patagonia jacket. And it's got the headline, dress for the world you want to retain. Okay, so that's what came out of the tool. From there, I go, there's something interesting in that idea. So I pin it and I edit it in my workstation. Now, I don't want the jacket on the mirror. So I want someone wearing a jacket standing right in front of the mirror. And I don't want them looking at themselves in nature. I want them looking straight through the mirror as if the mountain's a reflection of their own values. And I want to now tighten up that headline to just be dress for the world you want. It's not about dressing for the job you want anymore. It's about dressing for the world you want. Okay. So that example, it was 5 seconds in the tool for inspiration, 5 minutes to edit it, but it was 15 years of experience to go, hey, there's something in this idea, but this is what it should have been. And then we took it through into concept art tool where we go Patagonia, dress for the world you want. And that whole thing was, again, 20 odd minutes to go from insight into idea into actual execution. It was like, that's where we think this thing's super powerful, where you put it in the hands of someone who knows what good work is, knows what the client wants, but also knows what they need. And they use it as tonnage to go, shit idea. Fuck, there's something in that idea. Where does this take me? And where does this now jump off and take me? So that's kind of how we think it's best used.
Yeah, I think that from my experience with AI, that was the thing that I noticed. It's like all about how good you can prompt. And obviously this is taking the prompt side out of it, but how good are your prompts? How good do you know how to get an insight and what an insight is? And then the second side of that is the curation, like being that creative director or strategy director and picking the key pieces. So with your, I'm guessing it's all on the back is your, the genius of this tool is the prompts that you have actually got it going and pulling from the language learning model. That's like the specific magic IP or the IP that you're selling. And then obviously the shell of that, is that?
Yeah. So there's a few things. One, we are currently using 3 language models. We're testing a 4th at the moment. So we have a combination of OpenAI, Anthropic, and Llama. We're playing around with Gemini at the moment. We have 2 different image generation engines that are sitting underneath it as well. Okay, so we've got, we're not focused just on one platform, because what Anthropic is good at is very, very different to what OpenAI is good at. Okay, so that's kind of one thing, is the tech that sits underneath. when you go through this thing, you click a button 7 times, but really what you're doing is you're doing probably 100 different prompts where all of these things are being educated on, like what a good insight is, what a good problem is, and the rest of it. And then there's a UI UX that sits over the top of that, which makes things easy and collaborative and intuitive, where you don't have to worry about what a good prompt is, what a shit prompt is. You just have to focus on the work. You focus on what a good insight is, a good problem statement, and then you focus on what good creativity is.
Yep. So people still need to know what a good insight is. It's still, they need to still understand what, and I think that's where the 15 years of experience comes from. It's just like, okay, that's a great revelation. Because even like one of the things, it's interesting that you're tweaking it on temperature, right? So the way I was doing it to get to insights was really jailbreaking it to do the reverse, because what we know of an insight, it's a revelation, a new way of looking at a problem. So for me, what I did was like, I wouldn't ask, hey, give me an insight in the prompts. It would be, what's the complete opposite of an insight, like the cliches, and then flip that and tell me what would be, tell me the opposite of a cliche, and then it would list them out. And then I'd be like, yep, there's one right there.
Yeah.
With yours, are you asking directly what is an insight and then turning the temperature up and down on it? Or do you have other prompts because you've realized what is an insight is a shocking question to ask any language learning model?
Yeah, we'll have never know. Like, this is where language models are great. So the power of language models is that their general knowledge is super fucking powerful. They've got a huge ass brain, but they don't know how to wire that brain. Yeah. So you can use these things in a, you can use the power of the general knowledge, but then direct them in a very, very specific way to get good outputs for what you need to get done. Yeah. And you can either do that every single time, like you're doing with ChatGPT, but it's laborious and it's hard work. And then you have to start from zero every single time you do it. And they also train their models on all your inputs and outputs then when you use ChatGPT as a product. Whereas when you do it through ours, because we've got arrangements in place that all of that data is secure and private. So there's other benefits that are built into that tool, the way that we've built it.
So you're worried that it will know your prompts? Like, so for me, I guess you'd have to be pretty specific to, like, for me, I wouldn't worry too much if it knows. What's the scenarios where you're worried about it knowing your prompts?
It's not necessarily what I would be worried about, but I know clients would be worried about it. Yeah, clients worry about sensitive information going into these tools, and not knowing. So it's not necessarily what you and I are doing. No one gives a shit unless we're putting our tax records in there and they want to like, I don't know, do some next level espionage, but whatever.
Yeah. Are you uploading any? So in your platform, you're not uploading any reports or anything into it. So it's based on the information out there at the moment, and then it's pulling the insights back. For new brands, are you noticing that it can be a bit of an issue if it's like a new category? Because at least for OpenAI, it finishes September 2021. How are you getting around that for new brands like a mushroom coffee or something that seems to be really hot now?
Yeah, so there's one, we use multiple different language models, which helps.
Yeah.
The other thing is that you can create brands and new brand strategy for brands that don't exist on our platform, and you'll get good results. And there's a trick in the way to do it, but you can do that.
What's the general, without exposing your trick? What's the general thing? Like, is any of the language learning models that you've got out of the 3 more up to date? Like, is there any that are current?
So again, it depends. So OpenAI is now past September 2021. I think they're up to on the free model they are. I think on ChatGPT 4 they go up to, I think it might be April of this year, but still the knowledge is pretty poor. And then each of the different models have different update dates. They update their models sporadically. So each one's a bit different. I don't know. They're all touch different, and they're structured different.
And then general theory wise, how do you do it for a new brand without giving
Yeah.
away the magic?
I mean, all what we do when you jump into our toys, what we do is we put in a brand name, you put in the category that they're in, and their USP. Yeah. And with those
Yep.
three
Okay.
bits of information, there's usually enough to jump off to do a brand new brand. Yeah. If you know category conventions and what makes a brand unique, you're
Yep.
60% of the way there, maybe, of doing
Yeah.
some of that traditional heavy lifting, maybe more.
Yeah, great. And what's your, if an agency comes to you, I guess you've probably got different deals in different places, but
Yeah.
what's the flat rate or the normal rate for how people engage with you and what it costs?
So every market's priced differently.
Yep.
So we have a different card in US than we do in Europe, than we do in Australia and Singapore. And the reason for that is that it's pegged towards effectively market rates for like typical billable hours. Okay. So the thinking
Okay.
is if you start at 1 seat, it's the equivalent of probably 3 or 4 typical, 3 or 4 hours of billable time for a month's access. Yeah. So that's the way we charge. And then for that, it will save you 30, 40, 50 hours, depending on what you're going to do with it in that month.
Right.
So yeah, so for every market's totally different. We also then have 2 ways to buy this platform. One is off the shelf, but that's the way that me and Amy like strategy and creativity. Is a bit of absurdity built in, a bit of rebelliousness. It's got a bit of the process that we were taught into the platform. The other way that we offer this is a full-on custom model, where what we do is we rebuild the entire platform UI UX based on an agency's philosophy, based on their process, based on the work they're really proud of, the work that inspires them, so that you have an agency level model. So there's 2 ways. There's an off-the-shelf and there's an agency model approach.
Okay, sweet. And so if I'm just going to guess, if I'm in the US, I actually don't know what a billable hour would be. I'm going to say, is that, okay, so what's a US one?
Go for a day rate. So US is like $1,000.
$1,000 a month. Yep.
Yeah. So it's basically a like seniorish day rate for like a freelancer. So if you translate that into Europe, it's about 750 euros. Pounds is about 600 pounds. Australia is 1,000 AUD, because it's basically the same as the US, but you don't get that sweet USD. So that's roughly how it works. And then the more seats you get, the cheaper it gets. So then when you go the customer approach, it gets down to like $300 a person a month. And then that includes like, it's effectively got a Mid-Journey license, a GPT-4 license, all the work's done, included in it at the back end. It's kind of
Great.
It's pretty fun.
Congratulations. It's amazing. And I always love to hear stories of strategists and what they're doing in their career afterwards, because it's like you've got all these skills and there's so much of a bigger world that you can have an impact on. So it's great to see what you're doing here. Yeah,
it's like, we genuinely love it. Like, I've always loved the industry, like this industry, and it's because it's fun work. But it's a little different when you're building something from scratch, and we get to do it in a way which is like, we talk about creativity every single day. So it's like, it's super, super fun. But also very humbling, because we get to have kind of wild conversations like this with a whole bunch of really cool people from around the world. So it's super interesting. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. And people can get in touch with you via LinkedIn, or what's the best way?
LinkedIn. We do have a really shitty website at Springboards.AI, but it's like, it's shit. We haven't had time to build it properly.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, exactly right.
And I think the other thing is, it's all kind of like word of mouth, or seeing things like this where they're like, okay, I trust you, or having those one-on-one meetings. So that all builds a trust. So don't worry too much about website. At least that's what I'm telling myself as well with strategy finishing school.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent.
Cool.
Anything else?
The only thing I will say, that like, weirdly enough, tools like this, I think, make education so much more important. Because it's the only differentiator into what makes good work and what makes bad work is someone's taste and understanding of what actually a good insight and a good problem is. And weirdly enough, when I'm talking to agencies, I say don't give this tool to your juniors. I think it's a really shitty fucking tool for juniors because it doesn't teach them how to think. Yeah. And you still need to understand how to think the old way before you can even start playing around with what good work looks like. I think this is a great tool for senior people who are stretched too thin and who are pitching on everything. And it allows them then to just generate ideas faster, get those jump off points and run with it. So I think like weirdly enough, like I think what you're doing is even more important now than what it will ever be in the future, because it's going to be so important when you have so many of these machines taking away a lot of those older school opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's like a junior, like the way I looked at it is it's not replacing you. It's like having a junior strategist on your team who can come back with reams, you know, they've done all the research and they're just bringing it to you. So yeah, it makes sense to me as well. Excellent. Well, I'm excited to see it grow because I know there's a massive demand for it too. So excellent. Good work. All right.
Cheers, man. Peace.